I am fascinated by my inability to comprehend my own being. A woman complimented my quarine as we passed each other in front of the Galactic Pot diner, and I was overwhelmed by love. I turned and thanked her as we shared a smile and then continued on my way. Will I ever see her again? Would I have felt a lost sensation had I taken a different route to work? Is there even a shred of me remaining in her memory? I doubt my ability to dutifully recreate her appearance, but with an unfaltering certainty I could illustrate the swelling of my chest. To the very breath I could detail the fluttering in my lungs. What can cause such a feeling in a person? Is it simply a matter of deep emotional fluctuations that coincide with unexpected personal connections? It stands to reason that the depth of feeling is directly proportional to the state of being, but can one cause prompt the other? Do they each play an equal part, or is one the driver and the other the nail? My biggest fear is not that I will never see her again, but that I will and I won't realize it. Should that happen, I would know myself to be nothing but a pale reflection of the complex ballet of feelings performing within me. On the same token, if it were to happen, I wouldn't know it was happening, and thus I would feel nothing of the sort. Perhaps I will embrace that pale feeling regardless, just to be safe. When I meandered into the lobby of Simzonia, I scanned my work ID card and was alerted to my overdue therapy bill. Over the past year, the simple plastic key cards assigned to us have evolved into something far more sinister. In addition to unlocking the doors of Simzonia, they have a tendency to monitor your bank account, unlock your apartment doors before you reach for your keys, order slight adjustments to your prescription medications, and sabotage even the most harmless of irresponsible choices. I once waited a full 2 hours for an order of noodles before I realized my ID card had canceled it. A blue scrolling message across the card face read, "Work in the morning, bad to work your digestion that hard. Banana still on the kitchen table, great for tryptophan. Good night." It seems these days your work is your life. I suppose they would like your life to be your work. Who am I to say? I'm just a simpleton clinging to the vines that hang from the branches of middle management. I nodded to the front desk before realizing it was unmanned and then stepped into the empty elevator. I thought about hitting the button for the 5th floor, but thought again and pressed 18. There was nothing for me on the 5th floor anymore. At least nothing that wanted to see me. No, the 18th floor was my nest. The integral to my D503, as Eugene Zamyatin would put it. Before the doors had a chance to open, Frank was hopping through them and hounding me with questions. The energy he projects is not that of a human. Somewhere in his ancestral tree I can see rabbits. "Good morning, Roy," he says. "How are you, Roy?" he says. "Anything new, Roy?" he says. "We've got a big day coming up, Roy," he says. We move out of the elevator. "A new shipment came in yesterday, Roy," he says. "They're calling it the Haul of the Year," he says. "You think we'll finally get that golden drill?" he says. "By the way, Tan called out, so you're on feeding duty today," he says. I stopped dead in my tracks. "I was on feeding duty twice last week, Frank," I said to him. I knew it wouldn't matter. He could barely listen long enough for me to finish the sentence. He shrugged and hopped away, leaving me alone in the beige halls. I stood at the ventricular crossroads in the heart of the skyscraper that housed the 3rd largest deep earth drilling company in the Western Hemisphere. Straight ahead, a hallway to the common area and the desks assigned to every employee that functionally served no purpose. Even the computers were for show. They were cardboard and wire. Everything we needed was on our Simzonia armband. To the right, a hallway leading to the 24 rooms of recovered materials deemed too important for the lower floors, but not quite valuable enough for the higher ones. Room 1820, the feeding room, had begrudgingly become my home away from home, but you already know how I feel about homes. To my left was the narrowing hallway that leads to Frank's office. It twisted to one side and then another and then back again, the result of a rogue dweller breaking loose and burrowing where one cannot burrow. That happened back when I was on the 5th floor, cradling my innocence. I knew a visit to Frank would do me little good. A visit to the common room seemed much the same, so with great reluctance I turned to the right and headed for room 1820. The halls of Simsonia have an antiquity to them that I find endearing. A step further and they would plunge into the depths of timeless and simultaneously forgettable architecture, but the tightrope they rest upon is squarely where it needs to be. Art Deco without the intention or the elegance. As always, hanging on the rusted electric candelabras next to room 1820 was a leather apron and a pair of welding gloves. I never understood the gloves, but I wore them regardless. Verbal seemed patient enough to me. I equipped myself and scanned my ID card to unlock the reinforced iron-threaded door. I was surprised to hear silence as I entered the room. Verbal loved to watch television, especially during feeding hours. He was sitting quietly in his iron high chair in the center of the room, propping his furry chin up with one of his crescent-shaped claws. "No TV today?" I asked, before heading towards the meal dispenser in the corner. "Nope," he responded. "They don't let me watch Alienist Surrogata anymore." Verbal could say more with a tone than with any words he had picked up amongst us humans. I had an elementary school teacher who sounded just like him. I wonder. No, couldn't be. "You know, they say that show single-handedly saved broadcast television," I responded, as I slid the shield up on the meal dispenser and pulled out the steaming silver containers. "Shows don't have hands," he responded. "Oh, I know that," I said. "It's an expression. It just means without help from anybody else." "Does it also require you to use one hand?" he asked. "No, I am single-handedly carrying this tray of food, but I'm using both hands," I said. "Well, I don't like it." He turned his head to the side and blew steam from his long dangling snout, causing droplets of water to form in the fur that hung down like a beard. I pulled the stairs out from beneath the high chair and climbed them to get myself on the same level as Verbal. Creatures like him feed by opening their mouth as they burrow forward in the dirt, which just so happens to be a difficult feeding method to recreate in an office space. I pulled back the foil on his meal containers and took up his oversized fork and knife. Well oversized for me, well suited for him. "What do we have today?" Hot dogs, beans, jerky of some sort, and what is that?" I couldn't identify the last piece of Verbal's meal. Filling up an entire container were black and tan beans the size of strawberries. Sprouting out of them were white mucousy stems. "It looks like a bean," Verbal said. "I want to try that first?" I asked him. He shrugged his shoulders and opened his mouth wide. I awkwardly pinned one of the beans with the fork and placed it on Verbal's tongue. He closed his mouth enough for me to remove the fork before chewing down. "Tastes bad." "Okay, we'll push those to the side, I guess." "Why are you feeding me again, Roy?" Verbal asked. I was the only feeder he called by name. "I'm just filling in. Why, are you disappointed to see me?" I asked. "A little," he responded. I was caught off guard. We generally had a pleasant time together, as pleasant a time as one can have while feeding hot dogs to an imprisoned creature in a high chair. "I didn't want to be nice today," he said. I put down the fork and looked up at him. His dark green eyes, the size of baseballs, were staring right back, and I could see that he had been crying. "Not a good day?" I asked. He nodded back. I felt truly bad for the creature for the first time. I had brief moments before that, of course, but nothing worth noting. Nothing more than the brief pause of a child when their friend falls from the swing, waiting to see if they'll start crying and ruin the fun. Perhaps that was only how I felt as a child. Growing up in the fringe rows outside of San Adrian, I was one of the few kids at school who fought for their lunch. Even before I was born, the schools lost enough funding to cut out the cafeterias entirely. The wealthy kids brought their own lunch, but if your family didn't have enough that day, or if you forgot to grab it on your way out, you had one of two choices: go hungry or declare a challenge for another student's meal. To add incentive for the target of the challenge, the school awarded bronze leaflets that could be exchanged for a free day off of school. I lost more than I won, but I wasn't afraid to try. I even challenged the strongest boy at school, a boulder of a child named Martin. We called him Big Mountain Martin. He earned enough leaflets to take his entire final year off, one of the many oversights in the system. "How about we take a break from eating and just talk?" I asked. "Talk about what?" he said. "Well, whatever you would like." He shifted in his seat, causing the entire high chair to scrape along the tile floor. "What do you feel the most, Roy?" he asked. I had expected him to ask me what had happened in the last episode of Alienus Surrogata, maybe what hot dogs were made out of, but not that. "I've never been asked that before, Verbal," I said. "Is it a bad question?" he asked. No, it's not a bad question," I said. "I suppose I feel loss the most." "Loss? What did you lose? Maybe I can help you find it," he said. "It's not a specific thing I've lost," I said. "It's hard to describe. I feel like I am losing things. Every day I'm slowly moving forward like a boat, but I can feel the wake behind me. I can feel the things I'm passing that slowly flatten and fade into the water, but I can't turn back to see them. I know they're there and I have lost them, but I can't even see what they are. Am I making sense?" For nearly a minute, Verbal stared at me without responding. Then he said, "I understand. Keep going." I felt a rush of something within me, massive cathedral doors swinging open to welcome the congregation in my chest. "Once the feeling settles in you, it sticks," I said. "Like a flag planted into the wet soil of your past. The more it settles, the more you see the lengths at which you've traveled, and the loss begins to add up immeasurably. It reaches a point at which the smallest wake, the simplest bump in the water can feel like a monumental devastation." Verbal clinked his claw against his high chair. "My boat is making a very big wake," he said. At that moment, Samuel Gall's words rang out clear as a bell in my head. It was loud enough to nearly knock me backward. I stood there staring back at Verbal, waist deep in my own freshly unearthed feeling of regret, and all I could hear was her voice. "We are threads weaving in and out of the same tapestry. The things you do each day, the things you say, they matter. Even in the smallest ways, they matter to someone or something. In turn, that someone or something is changed for it, and the someones and some things around them are changed for it. To turn away from hope and love is to fail yourself, but worse than that, it is a thread being pulled loose from the brocade of our world. We will unravel, and then there will be no beauty left except for the beauty of a failed experiment. Remember, listeners, wherever you are, there is never weakness in love, only weakness in the lacking. This is Samuel Gall, signing off. Roy, Verbal shook me from my daydream. Everything okay? Sorry, yeah, everything is okay, I said. With all the determination of a stubborn child and the strength to match, I ripped my Simzonia armband from my arm. Now, Verbal, what say you and I get out of here?